Hi everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
And today we're going to be talking about the power of the potato.
The potato! My home state is famous for potatoes.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
It's almost like a brand name.
Idaho potato. Yeah, Ore-Ida is the famous frozen potato brand. It's Oregon, Idaho. Idaho is my home state.
So what do you do with potatoes? What's your favorite way to eat them?
Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Well, I like mashed potatoes the best, honestly. Or twice baked, or scalloped, maybe.
Scalloped?
Where you cut them into little tiny slices, and then you put them in a kind of a, what do they call that? You casserole them.
Oh, like kind of bake a deep dish, kind of bake them for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very American, I guess.
I do like the roast potatoes that would traditionally go with a British kind of Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
But just jacket potatoes.
Oh, baked potatoes we call them.
Yeah. The ones where you stick them in the oven for like 2 hours, slowly cooking
crispy.
it through in silver foil. And I do eat the skin. It's the best bit.
Yeah, I eat the skin last. Like I eat everything inside first and then eat it last.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's many different ways to enjoy potatoes, but we're now going to talk about a time and a place where potatoes weren't just a nice, hearty meal, but the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
Let's check out the power of the potato in Ireland.
Reading.
The power of the potato in Ireland. Nowadays, the potato is one of the most popular vegetables in the world. It wasn't always this way, though. Potatoes are native to South American countries, like Peru. They were brought to Europe by the Spanish in the 16th century. The Spanish were indifferent to the new crop. The potato wasn't widely accepted until it landed in Ireland. British explorer Sir Walter Raleigh is credited with bringing the potato to Ireland. However, some historians say this isn't true. The potato was more likely introduced by the Spanish at the end of the 16th century. No matter who brought it to Ireland, it became popular there. Ireland was the first European country to make the potato a part of people's daily diet. Farmers could grow many potatoes on a small amount of land. They could easily grow enough to feed their large families and any animals they might have. Potatoes gave the Irish enough vitamins and energy for long work days. It is important that we understand how dependent the Irish were on the potato. Some people had access to milk and meat, but people in poverty relied only on potatoes.
The article begins by saying nowadays the potato is one of the most popular vegetables in the world. Yeah, it's a big part of many different cuisines, dishes. It's a side dish, it's a main dish.
Yeah.
French fries, really, come on. So the word nowadays is an adverb and it just means the same as these days, right now, in modern times.
Right, exactly. So nowadays everybody loves potatoes, and fun fact, they're less a vegetable and more a legume, which is related to beans and all that sort of stuff. But you can think of them as a vegetable.
Right.
It wasn't always this way, though.
Yeah, we learn about the history of potatoes now. Potatoes are native to South American countries like Peru.
Wow.
Yeah, if something is native to a particular place, and we often use this phrase, be native to somewhere, it means it comes from a particular place. That's where it first appeared, was first discovered and found by people. Maybe now it can be grown everywhere, but originally that's where they're from. We might say grey squirrels are very common in the UK, but they're not native to Britain. They were brought from the US and Canada.
Right, and so the gray squirrels are native to where I'm from. But I didn't know that potatoes were a new world food.
I did do that. We have written about that in ED, which we used to both work at.
That's true. Yeah, so the potatoes were brought from South America. They were brought to Europe by the Spanish in the 16th century, so not even the Irish at first. They were brought to Europe by the Spanish.
But the Spanish didn't really seem to be excited compared to maybe other things like tomatoes and other kinds of things.
Yes, which they use a lot of.
Right, because we see in the article the Spanish were indifferent to the new crop. Let's take a moment to look at that word, indifferent. So if you are indifferent to something, you're not really interested in it. You don't care that much about it. It's not that you hate it, you like it, fine, but it's just not a big part of your life. So the Spanish were probably thinking, sure, we could eat the potato, but who cares? It's not what we want to be interested in. We don't really spend much time thinking about it.
Right, so potatoes were brought over by the Spanish, but they were kind of, they're just some random crop.
Yeah.
And crop here is the word that we will use to talk about plants like potatoes. Crops are plants or plant products that are grown by farmers, and usually they're used to send out into like grocery stores or for medicine or for anything like that. Basically, anything that grows on a farm that is harvested for use by people is called a crop. So an example sentence, you could say, the main crops to come out of this country are rice, tea, and wheat.
Okay, all very important. So yeah, the potato had got to Europe, but nobody was very excited by it.
To be fair, it doesn't taste like much if you don't prepare it right.
No, it's just a plain kind of filling, but it's not like a tomato or a pepper
it doesn't have flavor.
Right,
you know.
So we see the potato wasn't widely accepted until it landed in Ireland.
Ah, good old Ire. So yeah, how did it get there? The article tells us British explorer Sir Walter Raleigh is credited with bringing the potato to Ireland. Credited with. So to credit somebody with something, or to be credited with something, like Sir Walter Raleigh was credited with the potato, means he's recognized as having done this. Like, he's recognized for making this happen. So we credit people with achievements usually, like things that are really significant that they've done, and say, hey, this is thanks to you. Good job. I credit you.
Okay, so a lot of people would say, oh, Walter Raleigh introduced the potato to Ireland. But we see in the article, however, some historians say this isn't true.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where a lot of people disagree and say, well, he might have, or he maybe did something, but historians don't necessarily agree. A historian is a person who studies either history in general or one particular area of history, maybe the history of a country, the history of economy, of money, of a particular area, and so on. So you might say, historians disagree about whether the king, who ruled a century ago, was a good king or not. Yeah, people are like, well, he did this, but he did this.
But it's
we can't agree.
Yeah, you know, I mean, to be in general, there is no one really good or really bad. Like, everybody is kind of in the middle. But anyway, so we're not sure if Sir Walter Raleigh was actually responsible for bringing the potato. The article says the potato was more likely introduced by the Spanish at the end of the 16th century. Okay,
that does make some sense.
Especially since they had it first.
Bring it to Europe and then they bring it to Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it was introduced by them. We might know the word introduce in some way, but this is a little bit different definition. So let's take a look at it right now. Introduce, you might know this word as to say that you are meeting somebody for the first time and you say, my name is Kat, something like that. But this is also used to talk about when new things are brought to a new place. So it's to bring something like a type of plant or a type of animal to a place for the first time. Often we use it with to, so introduce this animal or this plant to this country. We talked about how different foods were brought from South America to Europe or to other places in the or from other places in the Americas, so that you could say it was introduced to Europe. And then the Spanish would have introduced potatoes to Ireland, not saying, this is a potato, nice to meet you, potato, but actually bringing it over to be grown there. So another example, you could say tomatoes, avocados, and corn were all introduced to Europe from the Americas.
So the article, we've kind of said maybe it was Walter Raleigh who did it, it could have been the Spanish who did it, but what we do see is that no matter who brought it to Ireland, it became popular there. So
of course.
In the end, it doesn't really matter. It's not important, but what we do know is at that point, the end of the 16th century, suddenly potato is being grown all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. And in Ireland especially. And Ireland is still thought of as being a potato country today. Ireland was the first European country to make the potato a part of people's daily diet.
Okay, so instead of it just being one of many food, it's like here, this is something we eat every day.
Yep.
Like other people would eat rice once a day or
exactly.
bread
Kimchi
once a day. Yeah, these there's a word for it which we might see later. I'll leave it off for the moment. But let's look at the article and find out why potatoes were so important to Ireland. We see farmers could grow many potatoes on a small amount of land. So when we use this phrase a and then an adjective and then amount of something, we're just giving an idea of quantity, but we're doing it for uncountable nouns. So a large amount of water, a small amount of land, a huge amount of money. Land, water, money are all uncountable. So we use amount. If it was a countable noun, we'd use number, a large number of people, a small number of animals, something like that.
A large number of potatoes.
Indeed there were, in a small amount of land.
Exactly. So the article says they could easily grow enough to feed their large families and any animals they might have. It's true. Irish people tended to have large families because they were Catholic and wanted to have many children. Yeah.
And it fed the animals as well. Yeah, you could, if you were taking bits of the potato, there were leftover bits, the skin and some other parts. If you're not eating it, which you totally can, you could still give some to the animals. And there was enough to go round.
Yes.
And it wasn't just about filling you up. There was more to it as well. We see in the article, potatoes gave the Irish enough vitamins and energy for long work days. So yeah, it's got energy, it's high in carbohydrates, which is what give people the energy to keep going, and it has vitamins in it. Now normally I would say vitamins, that is the British pronunciation. I'm using the American pronunciation because somehow I think it's actually right.
Really?
Because vita comes from vital. And I think it's the same way. So I think this one the British might actually have wrong. And now I can never go back to England.
Oh my gosh.
But either way, vitamin, it's an essential nutrient for our body. Something that is needed, not in big amounts like energy, but in small quantities for our bodies to work properly. And it's something that we're not necessarily going to make ourselves in our bodies. So we need to eat the right kind of foods to get all these vitamins in. And some of them are good for parts and some of them are good for other parts. Here's an example. Vitamin A is important for our eyes.
To your credit, I do think the British have aluminium right over aluminum, so I do say aluminium.
There we go.
Yeah, so, you know, now I can never go back to America either. I guess we're both have to stay here.
Never mind.
Oh, well. The article says, it is important that we understand how dependent the Irish were on the potato. Because, you know, if you have that much dependency, it's going to, you know, maybe cause problems if you can't get them.
That's true.
And that's a little foreshadowing.
Yeah, now that sentence includes today's language in focus, so let's take a moment to take a look at that.
All right, our language in focus today is this grammar pattern. It is critical, advisable, important that somebody should verb. So we have this grammar pattern to show something is very important to do. That's why we have all these adjectives for either showing something has importance or suggesting somebody do something. And it's followed by what we call a subjunctive clause. That someone do something. Now you don't have to remember the subjunctive word, but we're going to give you like how you can use this. So one simple example here, it is essential that he take his medicine. Notice I didn't say he takes, I said he take. That's because in the subjunctive you keep the infinitive. The verb does not change no matter what. So I could say we take, you take, they take, I take, all the same. Sometimes we add should to this clause, to kind of give it a suggestion. It is essential that he should take his medicine. We can also do this with be verbs. So, for example, it is critical that you be on time today. And here also it's be. It doesn't change to am, are, or is, always be. And then you can have another example with a negative verb. It is vital that we don't lose hope. Or it is vital that we should not lose hope. That one does change, so it's either don't verb or should not verb. But that's how you would use. It is important that you remember this.
So what we also saw in that previous sentence was that Irish people became dependent on the potato.
Yes.
If you're dependent on something, and we normally follow it with on when we talk about this meaning, then you really need that thing. You can't function, you can't live, you can't do without that thing. People talk about children being dependent on their parents for food, for shelter, for care, for everything else.
Yes.
They can't get those things by themselves. They need somebody to provide it. Here we're talking about being dependent on potatoes for energy, for vitamins, for being full. They need the potato. Without it, they would be in a lot of trouble. Here's an example. I've become dependent on coffee to get through the day, which is bad, really. I should try to manage without it.
I mean, you can have 1 cup a day, I think it's no problem. But if you can have 0 cups, even better. So, yeah, being dependent on one crop is often a really bad idea no matter where you are. You have to have a variety. So, what about Ireland here? It says some people had access to milk and meat, but people in poverty relied only on potatoes. One kind of food. Only on potatoes. So the people who were not in poverty had access to milk and meat. When you say you have access to something, it means you have a way of being able to get it. You have a way of being able to use it. They probably had cows that they could milk and that they could butcher for meat. So they had access to these things. But if you didn't have access to those and you only had potatoes, that was one kind of food that you were able to eat.
Yep.
That could cause problems.
Yeah, and that happened to people in poverty. We say if you are in poverty, that means you're poor. You don't have a lot of money to spare. You can't afford to get a cow. You don't have the land to keep a cow on. You can't have chickens to get their eggs or kill the chickens. That's all you've got, a small bit of land to grow potatoes on. And that is your only way of feeding your family and keeping yourselves slightly healthy.
Yeah, which is fine if you're, have healthy land and all that. But if something goes wrong...
Well, that's what we're going to talk about in day 2 of this article. But right now, we've reached the end of day 1, so let's go to our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So our chat question is, have you ever been to Ireland? Do you know anything about Ireland?
If it was Nicole here, she would say she's from Ireland.
Indeed.
But both of us have been to Ireland.
Yep, and I'm one set of documents away from having Irish citizenship.
Really?
Because my father was born in Northern Ireland, he's a citizen of the entire island. That's how the law works. So
that's awesome.
If I want to be an Irish citizen and get an Irish passport, I just have to go through the application process.
That's really cool.
Yeah, right now I don't need to. It doesn't bring me any advantages, but maybe one day I would do all the paperwork and get it. But I've also been there.
Yeah, I've been there too. I went when I was 13 years old. I was in a tour group, and we had a really good time. I would like to go again.
I was probably around 24, 25 when I went to Ireland with some friends. We went to Dublin, the capital, Galway on the west coast, and Sligo, which is sort of in between-ish.
We went to Dublin and we stayed in a town outside of Dublin called Dunboyne, and then Waterford, and I think we went to, well, we didn't go to Belfast. That would be Northern Ireland. But we went to some other smaller kind of places among the hills, you know. We did some like archery at a lake and stuff like that. It was very pretty. Yeah, very beautiful.
Checked out some of the history, some of the education about all the writers and poets who worked in Dublin. And the thing that I took home from it most is the music. The way that people will just kind of get together in a bar after work and just play music together and sing songs and that kind of music. Yeah, it's kind of, you can really get taken away by it and just sit there listening to it all night.
Yeah, I've actually been getting into Irish and Gaelic music lately, and I learned about sean-nós, which is the really old singing style of stories that you tell in bars in Ireland.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. You guys should check it out.
It is. There's lots more to say about Ireland, but we've run out of time. Join us tomorrow to find out more about the history of the potato in Ireland. See you then. Bye for now.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Native. The tree is not native to the area. It was brought here from Japan. Crop. Many crops are grown here in Taiwan, such as rice, certain fruits, and tea. Historian. As a historian of ancient Egyptian cultures, Dr. Harris often goes to Egypt to learn about its past. Introduce. Christopher Columbus likely introduced cocoa to Europe after returning from the Americas. Vitamin. Guava is full of vitamins that are good for your body. Dependent. Randy became dependent on pain medicine after suffering a car accident.
智慧小补帖。
Nowadays. Indifferent. Access.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net